welcome to a new episode of Nile Magazine. Today we have a lot of interesting segments, so stay with us. Our first segment is Story of the Week, and in it I'll be interviewing Dr. Dawla, and she's a cabinet member at the National Council of Women, to learn more about her and her story of success. It will be followed by the Eye of Horus, and in it we will be heading to the area of Memphis to learn more about it and to visit its open-air museum. As for the science page, in it we will be heading to the National Research Center to learn more about its latest research. Finally, in the Cultural Review, we will be learning more about Morocco's International Children's Film Festival. Now it's time for Story of the Week, and in this segment we will be learning more about a lady who excelled in many fields, in community service, in women issues, and in many other, and especially that she is a member of the Executive Committee at the National Council of Women. Today we will be with Dr. Dawla. Doctor, you were born and you lived in the United States for a long time till you came to Egypt 5 years ago. We'd like to know more about what you have done or what you did before coming to Egypt. So what did you do following your graduation?
Well, I worked as a policy research analyst in one of New York State Senate, and then I work in campaign management. I work for international NGOs, and then I came here September of 2010. I was going for a vacation, but previously before that, I stayed in Egypt for quite some time, and I got my high school from here. But I did my undergrad and grad back in New York.
Now, when you were in New York, were you also involved in women issues as well, like you're doing here?
Yeah, I remember the first club I joined in school, my college, was Strong Women in the Rise. And yes, because I think it's similar, like the issues that women face there and the issues that women face here are much similar. It's not too much differences, and people always think like, oh, but here it will be more, but honestly there is more challenging too. So I started from an early age, like when I was about 18.
So since the age of 18, you've been into women issues. That's quite interesting. Now, you've mentioned also another interesting point, which is that actually women also face many problems in the United States, because always we think the United States is the country of freedom. We don't think that actually women are facing problems over there. So what was the most challenging to tackle at that time?
No, there are a lot of issues. Young babies, because they don't have young marriages because of the society. Like mother got pregnant when they are 13, so we have to do awareness. And then we have the issue of unequal payment between female and male in the job market. And we had like access of jobs and access of managerial position was also given to male dominant. So the U.S. is a male dominant society, but not a lot of people are aware of it, because they see always the U.S. democracy, the small issues that break it up in the long term.
Well, you came to Egypt in 2010. What made you decide, I'm going to stay?
Well, it's a quite interesting story. I was coming for a week vacation, and I decided not to travel at the airport. I was supposed to take off. Then I decided, you know what, I'm gonna stay here. I feel there's something going wrong in the country. I don't know. I feel something wrong. So I called my parents and I informed them like, oh, I'm probably gonna stay extra. Then they said, no, you shouldn't, and they strongly disagreeing with me. However, I decided to stay, and I was volunteering in a campaign. And this is when I decided like I have to stay in Egypt because things were not going anywhere right.
Well, you took part in a campaign in Egypt. Do you feel that the political participation and the way the campaigns are run in Egypt are similar to what you've seen in the United States, or is it different? Tell me about that experience.
Well, this experience have been built along the way because 2010 to now we're 2016. I felt a lot of changes now. Like voters are well aware of the issues, well aware of the candidate. Unlike before, like 2010 was a disaster. In all means and all kind of disaster. But now, because I'm into it and I'm doing it and I train people, I think there are incremental changes to it and a lot of positive change. And the U.S., a lot of people don't know like the percentage of voters is not high. And sometimes I participated in the presidential campaign in the U.S. and people just vote because they like the person, or the person is from their race. So it's not like, oh, they know the person, they know what he's going to address. It's not like that. So it's similar. So people will say, oh, the American voters are well educated, and how they vote is not like that. Some of them are well educated and a lot of them are not.
Well, concerning campaigns, actually, I read that you have actually managed to raise awareness among around 26,000 women from more than 27 more or less areas. Would you tell me about that experience? And how did you address them? They must be totally each area different.
Yeah, it was quite. This is what I get from life. The 27,000 women that I have trained in Egypt. This is the experience that I gain all of my life. I train them all over Egypt, and it's definitely one area is different than another. So I judge them by their own language. I don't go and say I'm the American girl or Egyptian girl or someone who's speaking English and Arabic and French. No, I speak their own language. That's broke the ice with me and them. And that's how I maintain and communicated well with them. And they were open to it. They were open, like someone is honest. He coming to them down to earth. He's not just trying to give them just information and leave. No, he's trying to listen to. So it was an amazing experience for me.
So does this mean that you had to study the area, do research about it to understand the psychology and the social class you'll be addressing before you talk to them?
Oh yeah, definitely. Homework. Like every time I know like what I'm gonna say, what is common for them, what is the expression that common for them, what I should avoid. And even though I remember my first training, I wore like a galabia. And then I was like, you know what, I don't think it's gonna work. Let me be myself, but with their language. So yeah.
Wonderful. Now, for yourself, you're also involved in many activities, including the International Protection Specialist. Now, what's that title includes? Like, would you tell us more about the description of it?
Oh, this is my recent post. I work with refugees. And the process of issuing birth certificate, the process of nationality laws. So it's more or less it's a legal aspect, and I work also with women. So it's another aspect, but it's also helping women.
Now, is that with the United Nations, and is it involving Egypt only, or the entire region? Would you tell us more about it?
No. Involving Egypt and the refugees who reside in Egypt, and the number of refugees reside in the type of service they receive, and it's more or less for women to know that services, the legal services, what they are seeking for, and what is the law that manage all of these services.
Now, what's the biggest percentage of women? Where are they from usually? Is it mainly Syria or other countries as well?
Well, you have the Syrian refugees. They have it's like a large number. However, you have the Sudanese, Somalis, Eritrean, Ethiopian. They're also largely here.
Recently, whether at the United Nations or even in Egypt, several conferences were held about women in disputed areas and means of relieving their sufferings. Would you tell us a bit about that, and how can we help them?
What we helped them was law. Like we have the law. Egypt is one of the countries that have a strong law protecting women and protecting child. However, the implementation of law is different from one person to another. So if we give the right training to the government employees, things I think it will be much easier than what we facing today, because everyone have its own. He have or she have her own thought of implementing the interpretation of the law. But we have the laws, but we need to interpret them in the right way, in the legal way.
Now, actually, you're the youngest member of the National Council of Women, and even when you were at the Ministry of Social Affairs, also you were one of the youngest and most active members as well. Now, first of all, before we talk about the Ministry of Social Affairs, let's talk about the National Council of Women and your post in it. Would you talk to us about the committee you're in and the responsibilities of it?
Okay, so I'm one of the 5 people in the executive committee. The executive committee oversee the 17 other committees, and we see their planning, if they have any requests. So pretty much we are trying to help them in any way, and the executive committee is the committee that is responsible to act fast, to make a decision fast. If there's something pending, we fasten the process. So yeah, I'm one of them.
What is the most challenging are the most challenging issues facing women in Egypt right now?
I think for me, let's put aside the political empowerment. I think we need economic empowerment for women and microfinance project for women, because we already surpassed the fact that we are good in political empowerment, and we did a lot of work in it. We need to focus on empowerment, and we need to focus on the social empowerment too in terms of education.
On the International Women's Day, the theme itself by the United Nations was women parity, which is equality with men. To what extent is that fulfilled in Egypt?
I did like a comparison between female male in Egypt and female male in United States, and we're doing good, but we need a lot of work, yes, but there's an incremental process that's going on, and it's a positive process as well. So I think in the long run, and if we stay in the same path and the same speed, I think in 10 years we will have a much different way. And even though in managerial position, ministry position, in other positions, you will have a lot of women.
Now, before being appointed here at the National Council of Women, you worked also at the Ministry of Social Affairs. Would you tell me about, first of all, how did you join it? And about your role in it?
Well, at the Ministry of Social Solidarity, yes, I was an advisor for NGOs and INGOs and international funding. It's one of the areas I'm experienced at, and my work involved all the NGOs that is running in Egypt, what their challenges, what is the issues, if they want to register for a new NGO, the funding, how is the funding, the source of funding, what is the funding going to. So it's pretty much like managing the whole NGO and INGO process, and when they come to Egypt.
Now, for NGOs in Egypt, actually we have a lot of NGOs, but although we always see their invitation, we always see them at hotels, but then we don't really feel or sense it on the street. Why is that?
I think there's a disparity between the number of NGOs we have and the actual NGOs that work, and this is one of the main issues I had. Like we have 47,000 Egyptian NGO. That's a large number. And if you count like good NGOs that work in Egypt, it's going to be less than 1,000. So there must be something wrong. And when I get into this, I felt like the funding, there's something wrong with the funding, something wrong with the project themselves and the management, and how the people come and join an NGO, and how's that based on. And one of the other surprises that I found, like there are some NGOs that need help, but they cannot find help. And they really want to leave an impact, but they cannot find, because it's a business. No, yes, an NGO, but it's running in a business way. So unfortunately, we had like this number, like we have a whole disparity number between the actual registered NGO and the NGO that are working in Egypt.
Dr. Dawla Swelem, thank you very much for this interview, but we will be still continuing to talk more about your story of success in the next segment. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Now it's time for the Eye of Horus. Today we're coming to you from the area of Memphis. Actually, that name is a Greek name for the ancient Egyptian word Men Nefer, meaning the beautiful place or the beautiful construction. And this site was the location of the very first ever established ancient Egyptian capital. When Egypt was formed as a country, as a kingdom with the first dynasty, Memphis became the first capital and the area of Saqqara became the royal necropolis of it. This area used to house palaces and administrative offices of the kings of what we call the Old Kingdom, which started from the 3rd up to the 6th dynasty, around almost 3000 to 2900 BC up to 2400 BC, more or less. And right now this is an open air museum known as the Memphis Museum. It houses a collection of monuments of what was left of the monuments of Memphis, and most of the monuments here date to what we call the New Kingdom. That's around almost 1300 BC, more or less, the 18th and especially the 19th dynasty. Right now we'll start touring Memphis, so let's go. Left-hand side here, this is another statue of Ramses II acting again as a priest, but here now for the god Amun-Ra, the god of the capital, of course, of Egypt at that time, as well as the main god of Egypt. And during the time of Ramses II, it's worth mentioning that actually Luxor ceased to be the capital of Egypt. The capital went further to the north at Pi-Ramses, which is further in the Nile Delta to the north, but the god of Luxor remained the main god, who is the god Amun-Ra. Now, the concept of the king as a priest, which I dwelled on it but briefly, well, the ancient Egyptians, because the king was the representative of God on earth and he was to them the son of the god, he had to be the priest for all the gods, but it was impossible for the king to be there for every single god. So the high priest of each temple became his deputy. But on the walls of the temples and in the statuary, it was the king who's performing it, because actually the priest is just doing it on his behalf. So the king, he's the one who has to take the credit. That's one aspect. Another important thing that I wanted to say is about the concept of a temple in ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt, the temple was not a place just for worshipping the god. It was considered the house of the god, and every architectural feature of it represented one of the elements of life. Unfortunately, here the temple is not in existence, so unfortunately we won't be able to dwell on that in details because of the lack of the architectural features of it. But to my right hand side, this is a sarcophagus. It's totally unrelated to the cult of the god Amun-Ra, but it was brought from the area here, from the necropolis of Memphis, which is the Saqqara necropolis. The ancient Egyptians, because they believed in life after death, so actually they did everything to make sure that they will live again, including dehydrating the body, which is mummification, putting their bodies into a coffin, which we call sarcophagus. Now the sarcophagus changed in the design. It could take a variety of shapes. One of them is the plain simple shape like the one in front of us here, but this is out of granite. Granite is a very expensive stone at that time in ancient Egypt because it's hard stone, and it was quarried, as mentioned before, from Aswan. Temples in ancient Egypt consisted of a variety of architectural features, but in the simplest form of a temple, it will consist of two large, huge gateways, which we call pylons, followed by an open court with side columns, followed by a roofed court, then at the end the Holy of the Holies, or the sanctuary, divided into three: one for the main god of the temple, one for his wife, and one for his son or daughter, which we call the triad. Then side storerooms. Now this is the simplest form of a temple. Then attached to it there would have been some chapels outside in the open court or around it for some of the other gods of Egypt. Now behind me, this is a capital of a column from a side shrine that would have existed here for the goddess of love, joy, beauty, and music, Hathor. Hathor takes a variety of forms. She could be a cow, or a cow with of course with the two horns and the sun, or a lady with the cow's horn and the sun, or as here, a lady with the ears and the forehead of the cow. And the goddess Hathor was symbol of motherhood, beauty, and music. This part of the capital of her column is made out of limestone. Now it's simple and plain, but in ancient time everything would have been colored. To my left hand side right now, this is another statue of Ramses II, but with the god Ptah, the god of Memphis. Now it's interesting because the statue that we first looked on for the god Ptah was badly eroded, but here we can see the facial features of Ptah. He has short hair, he's holding a scepter, and we can see the symbol of this dashed column. That's the jet sign, symbol of stability, the vertebral column or back spine, some say, others say it's a tree. There are several mythologies about it, and theories, but mainly it symbolizes stability. Then there is a wasp scepter, which is almost like the handle of a cane. That's symbol of prosperity and the key of life, for the Ankh sign for life. And here it's with King Ramses II, because always the king wants to say, I am the son of the god. So the king is always represented in the company of the god to say that he is the son of the god. Now to my right hand side, this is a box. It's made out of sandstone. These boxes could hold either the offerings or statues of the gods.
It's 6 o'clock.
It's time for the science page. It's time to head to the National Research Center to learn more about one of its latest researches.